You need some mobility. If you're going to be a volunteer, just limited mobility. All right. If you would, pass these out. Certainly. Now, don't open your folder until I say open your folder. While we're waiting here, I'll just say that I was challenged earlier whether or not Joe Pepitone played for the Chicago Cubs in 1970-71. I stand corrected. No, I stand correct. He did. Yes. We have 35 minutes. If please raise your hand if you don't have a packet. The packet will say FAQ on the front. Please do not open the packet. We need a couple back here. I don't want to ruin your surprise. What do you need?
I lost my phone.
Oh.
Thank you, sir.
Takes a community. Again, raise your hand if you need a packet. Barbara's coming around. Who else? Way back here. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Anybody else? Would you bring that over to Wayne? Bring that over to Wayne right there with the Phillies cap. Who else needs a packet? Anyone else? Packets going once, twice? All right, I would ask that you open your packet. And inside, some lucky winner, or maybe two, is going to have a golden card. There's a golden card. It'll be in your packet. Oh, no throwing of the packets. Look close. Oh, we got one golden card. Any other golden cards? Oh, we got two golden cards. Well, I don't know if this is a prize or there you go. Oh, sorry. All right, don't eat those all at once. It won't be good. All right, now that we've got that out of the way, let me tell you what we're doing today. We are going to do our very best to bring as many people as possible up to speed in terms of the information gap that exists around our understandings of the possibility of reunification. Now, that was a lot of words. How many of you have read the report that came out at the time of our last convention? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you attended a convocation gathering? Great, good. How many of you received the leadership news from the Episcopal Diocese of Bethlehem? Should be the most hands in the room. Okay, if you do not receive the leadership news on a Thursday, It comes twice a month, typically. If you're a clergy person, I think you get 2 of them. Contact Paula. And everybody remember how to get a hold of Paula via email? Paula@diobeth.org. So complicated. Yes. If you forget, it's Paula at diobeth.org. Send it to Kevin or Steve. And all you need to say is, I want to get on the leadership news. If any of you have us by text us. Say, I want to get on the leadership news. That way we'll ensure that you're getting at least the majority of the information. How many of you saw the most recent video that Bishop Audrey and I put together that came out on Friday? It was really bad, too. I mean, I'm just telling you, it was really bad. No, it was actually very good. But in that video, we introduced to you, and this is brand new, spanking new, the FAQ document that's in your little packet there. If you don't mind to pull out your FAQ, for those of you who have visual challenges that require small print being magnified, yes, you're going to need them because it is small print. But it's also available to you if you go to the Reunification website. Does anybody know what the Reunification website is? I had such high hopes for you, Michael. It's actually, I think it's on the back of this document. See at the back there, on the bottom? Reunification diocpa.org. You will find the FAQ there as well, a little bit different format, easier format to read, some may say. The questions are provided, and then you can scroll down and gather the answers. So you may ask, where did we get the questions from the FAQ? And actually, you gave us the questions. These are the majority of the questions that were asked either at convocations or in some of the Zoom gatherings that we had last summer. Also, it was a part of just everyday conversations that we're having when people say, why reunification? So just as you're glancing through that document, you'll see things like, wouldn't reunification create a diocese that's too big? We're concerned that we won't see the bishop if we reunify. For some, that's not a concern. Some, that's a joy. How would visitations work in the diocese, a reunified diocese? What about Bishops Scanlon and Nichols? We can only have one bishop, right? And you'll see that there's answers to each of these questions. If we move to a new central diocesan office, won't that mean that staff members will have to relocate, possibly lose their jobs? All of the frequently asked questions, as we understand them at this moment, and we are at a particular moment, we have tried to articulate in the best way that we can so that for you who may be coming, this may be the first time you've explored this question, hopefully it'll answer the majority of your questions. So that's the first thing I want you to become acquainted with. The second thing that was in your packet is that original convention document. Now, the convention document that was submitted, and unfortunately it was just a week before our convention, so not everyone had a chance to read it before we gathered for convention, but it's chock full of the initial findings of the discernment team. Do we have any members of the Reunification Discernment Team here? Good. Rodney's here. Oh, I see 2 in the back. There's, what are you doing in the back of the room? You come up here. So we have at least 3 members. Did I miss anybody? I'm a member. The only ones we're missing are Doug. And who else from our team? Chris, did I see Chris too? Doug and Chris. She went. Felt like she had enough reunification. Yeah. So you have a sense of who's on the team, but the team members provided a lot of initial material for us. You'll see in there is a wonderful history, which is on page, I think it's 2. If they're numbered, that would be nice. Yes, page 2. No, page 3. the Discernment Committee sub-team report, of which Rodney is on, and with Doug Moyer and a member from Central Pennsylvania. And amazingly, they start with the tectonic plates. You know, when you never know how far to go back with history, right? But we started with the plates. Thank you, Rodney. And then we moved all the way through the Susquehannock people. This is a little bit of controversy. You'll notice that in this original document, it says that the Susquehannock are referred to as the people of the Longhouse. The people of the Longhouse. But if you go to your reunification document, FAQ, in the very back it says, what would we call the new diocese? It says something along the lines that the Susquehannock people were known as the people of the Muddy River. Yeah, so there seems to be some controversy whether they're the people of the Longhouses or the Muddy River. I prefer Muddy River. And I won't attribute this to a member of the committee because I've done that before at our gatherings, and she denies the fact that she suggested this, but we thought the Diocese of the People from the Muddy River might be a possible name, or just muddy people. It's not as grandiose as the Diocese of the Great Lakes, which is the Diocese of Eastern and Western Michigan, but, you know, we're scrappy. So this document, the original document, gives you a lot of information, also financial information, program information, walks through the two dioceses in kind of a snapshot, talks about our unique ministries, should give you everything you need to communicate with your own congregation. All right? Now, you may ask, why do you need that information to communicate with your own congregation? Well, because the purpose of today's gathering, and where are my helpers? Thank you. You're a helper today. Helpers? The purpose of our gathering today is to make you trainers. Imagine that. Imagine if each one of you, maybe jointly, were able to bring back to your congregation a 50-minute offering. It could be on Sunday after services, before the service. You could cook some of your great food. Or maybe to your vestry. Maybe to the daughters of the king that you're a member of. Maybe the women's group in town that you're close with. Well, they probably won't care, but you could still practice with them, and then they can tell you whether you're doing it well. There are lots of ways. Everybody get a copy? Nope. Who else? Hands up if you don't have one. Here, I'll give you. Why are you always the last one? I miss you in the middle here. All right. Okay. Anybody else? Yep, another one back there. You got it? We should have plenty, so if you want another one, just in case. All right. So what you have before you is just a rough outline of how you might present this to your congregation. So let's just walk through it quickly, and then we'll get to the questions. Pre-session. Provide information documents to all invitees ahead of the time. You can either do that by giving them printed materials like I've given you, or you can just direct them to the website. Encourage them to access the 2023 convention report, which is what you have before you. To watch the convention videos. It's harder to pass out, but they're right there on the Reunification website. There's 2 videos that we presented at convention, one from Bishop Audrey and me, another one that came from the committee that gives a little bit of background and history, and then the FAQ. Any questions about the materials? Welcome and opening prayer. Some of you are better prayers than I am, but you got a prayer there. If you need to fall back on a prayer, you've got a prayer. Introduction. Describe a bit about the process to prepare for a vote on reunification. Everything in quotation is what you could possibly share. I hope you've all had a chance to review the materials and frequently asked questions. We hope that we can answer your questions today, but we may need to bring some of these questions back to the discernment team. You might even, if you know one of the members on the Reunification Discernment team, even invite them to come and to help and participate. They could lead this very easily. They've led a far more expansive report that was delivered at our convocations. The next bullet point. There's talk about holding pre-convention sessions. So we've had our first series of pre-convention sessions. There'll be another round of sessions that'll happen towards the end of August and early September as we get closer to convention. If you flip over your page, you'll see the top bullet there talks about the 5 models to be considered: the ministry of the episcopate, the design of the diocese, constitution and canons, finance and properties, and staffing. So what will be presented most likely at convention, if the discernment team determines that they have resolutions or models to propose, they will be presented in advance at convocation gatherings, either in person or online, so that you can begin to get a stronger sense of how we might do this if in fact we're so called to do so. Finally, having incorporated feedback received from many sources in September, the discernment team will share the actual models and other content in the form of resolutions. And then I would encourage you to ask 4 questions. You can read them. What do you know about reunification? What do you like about the idea of reunification? What concerns you? And what additional information would you need to make a decision? Who makes the decision about reunification? What's that? Delegates to convention. Correct. Delegates to convention. And then wrap up. Thank you for joining us today. We'll share your feedback with the discernment team so that they can better prepare for the special joint convention. Encourage other people in your congregation to go to the website. And then post-session, we ask that you just let a member of the reunification team or your regional canons, Melinda or Barbara, to let them know that you held the session, what was helpful, what you learned. A simple email will suffice. Questions? Do you feel like you have enough information? If you were to walk through the FAQ, walk through the convention report, do you think you have enough to share with your community? All right. Yes. Do we have a microphone? Rodney, can you get us a microphone?
Check.
All right, I think, did I hear a question over here?
Are we going to vote on this at next convention?
So the process as it stands at the moment would be that the discernment committee would bring resolutions related to reunification, if in fact that's the discernment that comes out of the committee, to the next convention for both dioceses to vote on those resolutions. Now, let me just add that that does not mean that reunification would happen overnight. I think what the planning, the early planning is looking towards is that we would remain as essentially the same through 2025, and that we would have a joint budget moving towards 2026 and probably transition in terms of the episcopacy to one bishop in 2026. So we're talking about a year and a half away. Other questions? Rodney?
So I read, wow, now it's on. So I read the history, I scanned this, perused it, if you will.
Yes.
But why reunification? Like, why overall, after all that's written, what made the decision in itself to say we need to come back together?
Rodney, you want to answer that? Yeah.
Make sure I'm in the right spot. I think essentially we're at sort of a nexus where we have bishops of similar ages who Bishop Scanlon will be retiring. Both dioceses are in good shape financially. I think we're in good shape from a ministry standpoint, but as we get smaller, it's going to be more difficult for us to go ahead and fill certain diocesan sorts of roles. It also means that we are in a good spot where some dioceses at this point in time, such as in Wisconsin, are being forced to consider this. And in fact, one of the dioceses in Wisconsin essentially can't afford to have a bishop anymore. So they would be leaderless at that particular position, and it's forcing them. So if we do it from a position of strength, it's going to be, I think, more fluid, easier to get through rather than doing it when we potentially have to do something.
Yeah. So what I would encourage you, and that's really one of the great questions, I think, for our congregations as well. I would encourage you to watch the video that was created and presented at convention by the discernment team, which speaks to the trends not only across the Episcopal Church in terms of attendance, giving. I don't need to tell you what the demographics are. You can look at the demographics of the church just kind of by looking at our gatherings. The realities of the Episcopal Church and essentially all mainline churches. And some of our evangelical brothers and sisters are dealing with this as well. The reality is that the resources that we once had that was able to give us judicatories, and by judicatory I'm referring to a diocese, those resources are not going to be available in the same way 5 to 10 years down the road. The best way that we measure that is assessment. Okay, the assessment, which is the 12% that your congregations give to the diocesan offering, is what helps fund not only the clergy and the lay leaders who lead the diocesan staff, but also funds events like these events. Those funds have been declining for a number of years. So the reality is that, yes, we are strong, we're vital now, but we know that in 5 to 10 years, it's going to be a shifting reality. So preparing for that reality includes the fact that the most expensive person in the room, if you would raise your hand, is your bishop. That is the most costly asset or resource that we have. And that the size of the two dioceses being reunified may seem daunting, but in reality, it's one that could be managed with one bishop and one staff. I also want to say that Bishop Audrey kind of spoke to this reality in the earlier session. I hope you were all there. When she talked about the fact that we have strengths in both dioceses. You know, our strengths are our mission and ministry in Kajokeji, our Latinx ministries. Those are at the forefront. We have so much work that you're doing on the ground in terms of feeding ministry, clothing ministry, work in your communities. They also have unique ministries in areas that are how should I say, more organized. Their creation care ministry, their Stevenson School. There's resources in both dioceses that we believe could, if they were to come together, could be a synergy. The Stevenson School is another great example. And then I'll move to the next question, because a single diocese is not going to be able to afford a formation house for much longer. They pay for the dean, for the resources, but the reality is that for that vibrant ministry to have two dioceses working together to share in that also would give us a better sense of partnership longer term. Great. Other questions? Yes. Yeah, just as close to my house as possible. Thank you for shouting. So you'll see if you read through the FAQ that is one of the concerns of people, is that someone would lose their job. Like all of a sudden we would move the diocesan offices into the center of this geographic mass, which is...
It's actually where the east and west branch of the Susquehanna come together.
Is there a town there?
I forgot the name of it right now off the top of my head, but I looked it up.
So, Muddy Water, yeah. So the reality is that when we were a reunified diocese, do you remember where the diocesan center was, where the cathedral was? It was Reading.
Reading.
Because Reading, even though it's very far south, was the center in terms of this area. So I think what we're looking at is a very diverse, very dispersed, not diverse, well, hopefully diverse too, but dispersed model of leadership where we may have two locations, one in Bethlehem, one in Harrisburg, where staff may be working. We're already in the Diocese of Bethlehem right now meeting remotely via Zoom for all of our staff meetings, and that's primarily because Canon Melinda, who's the Northern Canon Missioner, doesn't want to drive to Bethlehem to meet with us on Tuesday mornings. And we also had a staff person who was in Miami for a while. So the realities are that it's going to look different. Those of you who are working right now know that your offices are looking very different in terms of the way that you're functioning. What we do have, though, is we have a very vibrant cathedral here in the Diocese of Bethlehem that has resources available to us, however that's going to look. There's also similarly very solid congregations in the Diocese of Central Pennsylvania, whether that's your cathedral or other locations. The question about these large houses that we live in, I won't say anything about the Diocese of Central Pennsylvania's house, but they're looking at that. It's, 3 or 4 stories? The ghosts are on the 3rd floor or the 4th floor. It's a large kind of inner city building that's much larger than their needs. In the Diocese of Bethlehem, if you've been to the convocation gatherings, that our diocesan offices are shared currently by New Bethany, who actually is sharing the right side of the building. They actually have 11 people in 3 rooms in the upper portion of the building, if you've been in there. There are needs for our building in terms of outreach in that community. So there are options for us in terms of the future. Others? Great.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Central Pennsylvania has a similar structure that we do in terms of convocations. Are they structured similarly now?
Rodney, why don't you?
Yeah, they actually have a convocation structure as well. And Bishop Scanlon is in the process of, I guess, interviewing. I don't know where she's at on that. It was a couple of months ago that she mentioned in one of the meetings is that they're also going to a canon missioner sort of system. So we're sort of mimicking each other in some respects, and they're already doing some of the things that we're doing.
Yeah, it's a great question, Sarah. I think the committee's been talking about maybe creating 4 regions of the new diocese, 2 regions north and south, and what's Bethlehem currently, 2 regions north and south, and what's currently Central Pennsylvania. Maybe just reconfiguring the convocations a little bit to kind of meet that model, and having possibly regional canons in each of those locations. But we're still working through that. That's the type of thing that you would receive as a model. What is unique, though, Sarah, is they don't have an assembly model that's led by somebody like you. So we have a unique model here where we try to not only gather our convocations, but we try to gather together the rectors and the priests in charge, as well as the wardens of our congregations, to come together and to talk about partnerships. That has taken off in some places, like yours, less so in others. That was our aspirational model. They have something called Shaped by Faith, where they actually brought folks together for, I think, almost 3 years to talk about possibilities for partnership in clusters or regions. So we're doing it a little bit differently, but we're still gathering regionally. Other questions? Yeah, Ron. I know where you're going. Keep going.
Just take off your mitre and set aside all of the official stuff. How do you personally feel about all of this?
So when I began to first walk through this, and a lot of this for me started in conversations with some of my colleagues in places like Wisconsin, Eastern and Western Michigan, that just joined together in what's called Juncture. Minnesota, they came together in like 1947 or something like that, so they've been doing it a while. And actually Bishop Craig Loya is going to be at the clergy gathering that's going to be held in a couple of weeks. I hope all of our clergy can be there. But when I started to talk about this and look at the possibilities and the realities, I tried to put myself over here. You know, I've been coming to your parishes lately and talking about how much I love you and love Pennsylvania. So, you know, I try not to feel over here. I just try to put it over here because the future of the diocese is what's most important to me. Okay? When I came here from New Hampshire, I came here, and I'll be saying this in a few moments with my final remarks, Sarah, I think you said, because I was asked to help us build something that we cannot see or know. That was in your profile. Bishop, come and join us in building something that we cannot see or know. I believe the reunification possibility is that. That's me. And my heart is in that. Now, where I fit in my ministry, and I just want to correct Rodney, I am much younger than Bishop Audrey. I just want to point that out. I think we're 3 years apart. But so I don't have intentions of retiring anytime soon. But it can't be about me, Ron, to answer your question. It's got to be about what are the needs of the future diocese or diocese. And that's kind of where my heart is. Others? Yes, Canon Barbara, way in the back. Oh, 5 minutes. And thank you, Ron, for that question. So, you know, feel free. You can drill deep with this. Yeah. David.
Any discussion about what needs to happen at General Convention once this happens, because it needs to be ratified by General Convention. So how does that impact the timeline of what we're doing?
Rodney, do you want to speak to that?
Sure, why not? So what we're doing is a reunification, which would end up, if both dioceses vote to reunify, it has to go through approval by the bishops and the standing committees the same way that approval of an elected bishop happens. So it doesn't require a general convention vote. Canon say that, yeah.
So, yeah, David, I would say that there is question about what it is that convention needs to provide. What we've been learning from the General Convention office, from some of the gurus in the church, so Bishop Sean is one of those, who's the parliamentarian on the bishop side, is that reunification is a little bit different than what's happening in other places. So, but we're working through that. We have right now 2 chancellors, a vice chancellor, an assistant chancellor, who are asking some of those same questions. Also, Jen Adams, who's our, and those who are coming to the clergy gathering, I'd ask her that question as well. She might be the best one to answer it. She's our consultant who's been working with that very same question in eastern and western Michigan. So how that needs to happen, whether or not it needs to happen at a particular general convention, which would mean you'd have to wait 3 years, I think is a question that we've been told is not necessary, but we'll get there. Thank you for that. Yes?
Not knowing the politics of the church, but just looking forward, if this would happen going forward, is there any plan of constantly working across the board once we reunify? I get the feeling our churches are growing further apart instead of closer together. Making a bigger one, are they going to look at more things going forward as they go forward, decisions that need to be made across that unified body?
So I personally have not experienced that sense of growing farther apart. I can tell you that there are pockets of the diocese where we are not communicating well together. There are other areas, Sarah's community that gathers monthly and has a newsletter, they're communicating pretty well together. I'm not sure that the answer is necessarily to stay away from unification because, quite frankly, in a single diocese, we haven't done it perfectly. What we are learning, though, is that our regional canons, bringing pastoral support into the regions of the diocese out of the old model, that's my phone saying I'm done talking, moving folk out of the of just one location. So for those who've been working with Canon Melinda and the northern 3 convocations and Canon Barbara and the southern 5 convocations, I think we're making inroads into bringing folk together, even though we've got the same geographic region. So I'm not convinced that just because we'd be larger geographically that we wouldn't be interconnected. Yeah. All right, one last question, and then I think I need to wrap it up.
How would reunification affect individual parishes?
You know, I am glad you asked that because if you open up your FAQ to page number 4, you're going to see, and 5, you're going to see about 4 paragraphs, oh, well, no, 2 paragraphs, I'm sorry, 3 paragraphs, that speaks to kind of what I was just talking about with the canon missioner model and also speaks to the hope that a reunified diocese would allow for additional resources to make their way from the diocesan coffers into the local community. And you do that because you have less resources that are going to the judicatory body and they're going towards the community in the form of granting, possibly in the form of some sort of shift in assessment. So the hope is that at the congregational level, you'll feel that by having either a shifted assessment or more granting opportunities for you to be able to do the work in your community and in your region. Both Bishop Audrey and I have spoken often about the fact that we are a small diocese of small congregations. We're actually a small church of small congregations, if you look at the Episcopal Church generally. So I think commitment to small congregations will remain. Resources, I think, will shift. I think you'll have local resources, and I think you also have the potential to have, like, a communications person and a youth minister that they have in the Diocese of Central Pennsylvania, but that we're not able to afford currently just because of our size and our resources. So I think there is some scale there that'll help us moving forward. Thank you all. These are all great questions. I will get you pickles if you have this in your congregation. So you wanted pickles. You email me that you've done this in your congregation. I'll get you pickles. I may have to drive there. Yes, thank you. Great to be with you. So, when I went to Drifton last summer, there was a couple of people who sat with me at our brunch and promised me that they were going to help me to get plants so that I can be full stream here. Right now, the Giant provides me my pickles, but and I know, but I know it is, but you know what? There's always hope, and if we do it together, Drifton will help me get pickle plants. Are they? See, like I said. All right, thank you. Thank you, Rodney.